Let's move on a little bit to practice planning, right? We got the Willies and the Joes, and making sure we got the right dudes coming in. And I know that especially at the high school level, I mean, if you don't, when we only got the guys for so many days, right, of a year, and to make sure things going, but like, being the helm of a program and making sure that your team's going in the right direction and where you need to be. And I know that changes throughout the whole entire season, and learning the character of your team. But just talk us about the practice plan and what do you like to emphasize, whether it's early in the season, as the season goes on, and especially towards the end when you're getting into that playoff hunt.
Yeah, and a lot of respect to Northwest high school coaches. I especially having done a little bit of that Chapman stint, realizing, wow, Southern California essentially runs like a 16-week, full fall deal. They got winter hitting. Obviously Division 3 level, having some different rules in terms of contact. I think that just shows you do need to have a strategy for what you want to work on because you want to get bang for your buck in terms of that. I think what has really worked well for the places I've been, and it wasn't always said this way, but I will kind of quote Pat Casey again on one of the first things he taught me early on in a meeting, and it just stuck with me. And it was like, wow, that's makes a lot of sense for why we do the things the way we do here at Oregon State. He said practices are for coaches and games are for players. And when you get players bought into and fun, my definition of fun to what my guy's definition of fun is in practice is probably very, very far apart. But getting guys to take pride and have the at least energy, enthusiasm side of the fun and competing and getting better. And then if you, like you have said in your days you have, or being effective in practice planning, if you've worked on the right things, that confidence and that ability to play free and easy while also being aggressive, just we try to get to that peak performance, elite mindset in the game of baseball, hopefully comes a little easier to guys. The other side, before kind of specific either, drills or philosophies, practice needs to be hard. Guys need to be failing. Really, Jim Horner moving on from Washington State now back to the pro ranks. It's great to get perspective of what other organizations are doing at just the highest levels. Not that everything applies to what every other coach is doing, of course, professional baseball different than other levels of baseball, but a lot of these organizations, they want a 60-70% failure rate in their offensive work. They want different metrics for pitchers and their strike percentages and the ability to throw certain pitches, certain heights, certain counts, that type of stuff. I think you got to kind of create the balance of that. Like, I hope games feel easier than practices because then guys will just feel like if they put in that work in those challenging practice environments, they will be able to just sort of let their ability show through and kind of, whether it's mind, whether it's fear, whether it's just the lack of confidence, all those things that can come through. When it comes to just specific practices, though, I really believe in being simple. Eddie Smith, definitely taught me a lot of different ways from Oregon State, where we were much more complex with a lot of the things that we were doing in that system, to seeing then the Lower Columbia system after those experiences I've had. Kind of the opposite ends of the spectrum. I would say now we're very kind of much blended. Eric Lane as well, Gonzaga alum after Lower Columbia. So some great pieces picked up from that program and those coaches over there. So I think if you keep it simple but you keep it objection based, you can get a lot of buy-in. And I also like grew up, being a Pac-12 fan, Pac-10 at the time, hated USC, but really loved Pete Carroll, Reggie Bush, Liner, just that whole vibe. And Pete Carroll, I really, for the whole time I've been a coach, I've appreciated about how his practices are all about tempo, keeping guys engaged, shorter periods of time with tempo. If you're not good at it for 15 minutes, don't do it for 45. We're blessed at college, which I know is so different than the high school that we got tomorrow. We have days that we can get out there and work on stuff. If we're imperfect today, okay, yep, let's get frustrated about it. Let's coach it up, and then let's just get to the next thing, and then let's dominate that, and then let's get to the next thing, and let's dominate that. That's really how baseball players, have to think in a game as well. I think that's huge for how we structure things. But we, like I said, our new school in some of our training, but super old school in a lot of just our philosophies. We have individual defense every day. We base run in a team setting or drill setting every day. And we have an on field BP routine that has defense, base running, different situations, cage groups that we try and really fluster guys through with just how we're flying around and make them feel a little uncomfortable in a way, but still trying to execute. And I think those are some of the most important things we do, especially when you talk about like outfield defensive reads, knowing situations. Those are hard things to work on or create drills. So, by creating situations in every infielder knowing, hey, on defense, I'm either getting one or I'm getting two. Outfielders could be bases loaded, one out, could be second, third, no out, could be first and third, one out. Just another simple vibe that we talk about. Hey, let's keep the hitter off second. Like we have good pitching. Let's not let big innings get on each other by giving free 90s. So really the last piece I'll add is the defensive side and really just the overall program mindset of take care of the baseball. Take care of it. It is valuable. If you do not give up free 90s and you eliminate unforced errors, especially mental errors, you're going to be in a lot of ball games. And then really the finisher for me, and this is like I said, Eddie Smith, just so much better coaches I've been around than I am for myself. But what he created just really as this program mantra here at Lower Columbia is win anyway. And over the course of the years, even since Eddie's been there, I think that's been misconstrued as just we only care about winning here, or it's just win at all costs, or it's just we're going to stab you in the back to go win. And it's really not that at all. It's no excuses. Yeah, you're at Lower Columbia. You're gonna get people's best shot at times. Win anyway. You're getting squeezed on the mound. Win anyway. It's cold. Win anyway. No one cares, man. You still have to go be accountable to do your job in that way. If you kind of create that in your little aspects of your practice, that's worked really well for us of guys really seeing tangible results of wow, if I control my focus, if I control my energy, I can impact my performance in a positive way. But also knowing, hey, you could also do all that and totally suck, guys. This is baseball. So can we figure out how to deal with that aspect? And that's a day to day, and that's with all of us in life. So we don't have that figured out by any means, but it's something we do talk about a lot and try and get guys to work on that side of it.
There's a lot to unpack there in that answer, and I love it. And the one that early on you talked about allowing kids to be comfortable to fail in a way, and I didn't truly understand that until I got to go and watch a Division I practice. I'm not going to say where it was at, but I was talking to the coach, and he liked to have close practices, and I got to thinking that's odd. Like why? He says, well, the guy up taking BP's playing for Team USA this summer. The next guy's going to be a top 5 draft pick, and so on and so on and so on. He goes, so why would I let pro scouts sit up here and critique these guys, and they can't get better and fail? And I thought, wow, okay, that's awesome. And so then I got to think about my 2B small school program back at Kittitas. So why am I? You're exactly like the win anyway, and we want to have guys winning and growing. But when I finally realized that, the kids would relax and they got better because hey, it's okay, fix it. Like don't be mad about it. Learn that you're not perfect right now. There's these guys getting paid millions of dollars doing it wrong, but they're going to learn and they're going to fix it. And you could see the sphincters release a little bit, and their baseball got so much better along the way. And it did see more competitive guys when it came game time because they were allowing themselves to figure it out 2 to 3 days beforehand.
Well, and then I'm going to even counter to your point there. Here we are at junior college where we're saying, hey, you need to show your best self every single day because Oregon State, Hawaii, St. Martin's, Bushnell, go down the list, Linfield, anyone could roll into this yard and change your life.
Right.
So I totally see all of that. At Oregon State and everywhere I've been, we've had totally open practices. I've not known anything different. I really appreciate kind of hearing that insight, because I think there's some value to that. I do think, especially for those high end prospects that are scrutinized up to that degree, totally fair. Like, why am I costing a guy money when really we're gonna take his game to another level and have him be even a higher draft pick? If he embraces that, I saw that with Michael Conforto. I mean, that's a guy who made adjustments. That's the best guy I've ever seen in my life, other than being a fan of Nick Madrigal, Adley Rushman. Weren't physically around them, but hey, if that guy can make adjustments, that's a big deal. But I appreciate that side. I think, whatever your environment is, whether you're going to, have kids have a little bit of noise, we'll kind of just call it around. I think, and maybe I could be wrong on this, I could be totally off base. I think that's good, because baseball is going to feel even crazier than that when you're in the moment. But you got to be a good communicator and let guys know. And it's a lot easier when you're at the junior college level or the high school level. I think a kid should be able to try and let loose. But also, kids don't like the, I don't know if peer pressure is not the right term, but failing in front of their peers or looking inferior to their peers, in that way. And that's something that, yeah, kids, you do have to get over and grow up from. And I'm not a parent yet. I will be soon. My wife is very much pregnant, so hopefully I'll know the answers to these at some point, because I'm gonna need to. I don't right now, but I think in the best way we all can, you have to communicate based on that kid's personality of, this isn't going to be the right game for you if you're not going to allow yourself to see the bigger picture in terms of the process of getting better. Now, definitely hype yourself up when it's good. You can be frustrated, but if you're going to beat yourself up over everything, this might not be the right game for you.
First off, congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that.
Going to be one of the coolest things in life. And don't worry, we have kids and we won't know for another 15 years probably till if we did it right or not. We got time. Okay. But you're right. And I do agree with you on that, because creating the chaos in kids, okay, we figured it out. Now, when Coach Sorensen starts screaming and yelling all the time, I might not be yelling at them, but when I always throw out, there's 5,000 people coming to watch the Coyotes tomorrow. How are you going to handle it? Right. Keeping them comfortable, but yet uncomfortable to be comfortable.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and I think off of that too, and we were at ABCA and we had kind of an aha moment with our staff talking about how we're defining success, right? And a lot of that is based off the task, right? And I think that it was a hitting coach who was talking about, like, off a tee, I should be 9 out of 10, right? Off front toss, I should be 8 out of 10. Off of a, slower machine, maybe 6 out of 10. Challenge machine, now we're more game-like, 3, 4 out of 10, right? And the same could be said for, if you're running an infield drill on a stopwatch, right? And you're giving them a 4-second time or a sub 4 time or whatever, like, your success isn't going to be very high. But your players have to understand what your expectations are at that time and know that, like, hey, we're putting you in a really tough task right now, the toughest that you're going to face in the spring, in the game that you face. And, like, we don't expect you to be successful every single time, right? And I think if they know those expectations, like, they compete a little bit better. You talked about guys trying to deal with failure and, they can't handle failure at certain times. Cat shout out. Catch this clip, Eric.
If you're not you're listening to this, go to the
cat
YouTube
shout of the night,
and you'll see the mascot of the Fungo banner and Kelly's.
Darn right. Yeah, and I think they're going to be more successful if they know that, like, what you're doing is not to make them feel small, right? It's to make them feel like what we're working on is the toughest you're going to face in the spring. And you mentioned it too about talking about making practice tougher than what a game is, so it slows down. But there has to be that, you have to share that expectation beforehand. Otherwise, they're just going to fail without knowing why they're failing and then think less of themselves afterwards. So I love hearing hearing you saying about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the key, and I've really noticed this the last 5 years of coaching. Yet again, another opinion, not sure if it's right or true, but kids need to know the why of everything now. The why is important, and while that will annoy me to all ends at times, it's something that I'm becoming just a lot more at peace with, of just coaching just what the modern athlete is, or how things go. Yeah, you got to have expectations. There's got to be, some rigidness to it, of course, but you said it, just the blindly doing whatever doesn't work as well with a lot of kids. So I agree with that. The why is important. And I think that, your staff hit the nail on the head of just, if we can get guys to understand that, then they can go perform and say, oh, shoot, insert whatever. I'll use LC State, just a great program where you face, tough, typically pitching. Yeah, I'm not afraid to go play those guys, and that's just, hopefully we get guys that work so hard. Go do your best and don't let your performance actually define who you are. Yes, be frustrated with it. Yes, have high expectations. And this is one of the hardest things in this game, to not just think you're terrible because you had a bad day at baseball. Yeah, you work hard. If you don't care, by the way, anyone out there listening, then yeah, that's an issue too. You should care. If you just don't care or it doesn't bother you, then yeah, I got a problem with that as well on that end. But you can't be defined by your performances, especially at the college level, because you have so many reps, so many performances to do. So it's just a really tough way to live. And I agree with you, Coach, on the why aspect of getting buy-in from your team.
How do you balance those like drill work that you do as far as like, and I guess it's more so for hitting, because you don't want them to break them down all the time. You want to have like some feel good, like pipe it down the middle BP and hitting homers or whatever. But how do you balance that like challenge day activity or versus the feel good? Like, is it part of everyday practice that you're trying to do that, or is it like kind of a weekly thing that like today's gonna suck because yesterday was really bad at practice? Like, how do you
I
balance
actually
both those
think our
ends?
guys, the ones that have enough feel and are smart enough to realize that we do a lot of similar things on similar days and similar orders as we go through things. We do kind of create some themes. So we want to win the spin on certain days. Here's another Ryan Gibson, Oregon State. Just a lot of talks we've had. We believe in angle hitting around here, angle BP. Us being able to get on field often really helps with that. Of course, it's an advantage. But so we have a day that's angle. We have a day that is only situations, where guys don't get as many attack swings as they probably want to if they could write the BP routine. But I agree with you that you can't just have pulverizing DeGrom sliders every single day and just think that your guys are really going to buy into your offensive approach, because they're never, working angles. They're never feeling how to properly turn their barrel, really getting that awareness. I know we're really kind of talking specifically about offense, but just what their body, what their barrel's doing, in space. So it's a mix of that. The last piece of that, and this is really what I think I've evolved the most, even just being an assistant back with Eric Lane, is in-game translatable. Like, are what we're doing giving guys a similar either feel, look, or skill that they will need to perform when it matters with guys on base? When the guys that think it's a pressure situation don't get it done, or because we've trained this, we know the situation, we've trained the environment, we can step up and go do it. So balancing that, I know it's not a perfect answer of do this day, do this that day, but I think it's having a feel of, are what we're doing preparing us for what the guys are going to see in a game, because that'll really help with confidence and making sure they're bought into what you're doing. But yeah, you need to, and for me, it's really working posture, and we preach hip hinge as probably what our guys get tired of hearing from us the most on both sides of the ball. So we're just trying to brainwash them and work on it 15 different ways that they don't really know. We just want them to hinge, hold angles for a long time, and rotate really fast. But sometimes we're throwing a med ball. Sometimes we're angle hitting. Sometimes it's slider. It's all those different things to create that adjustability, in the swing. But if guys don't feel like they can work on their swing and get some of their reps, and I love how you call it feel good because we do too, coach. You got to get feel good. Um, but I'm the ball flight police. So if you're hitting it just a little too high, we got some training windows that we like to train in with our on field, and just making sure that, yeah, in a game when we show up a little bit on the bottom of the ball, that it's a homer and not a warning track fly ball. But little long-winded answer on that, but I think that's a big piece of trying to find the recipe. Some weeks you're not good at it, some weeks it just fits seamlessly and you feel like guys are really getting a lot better.
Coach, you're really getting me fired up here, man. This is some solid stuff. But I just want to throw out there, how important is our response to our players in these stressful situations? And I think I look at coaching a lot like parenting. If my kids are, told to do one thing and they don't do it correctly, my response is either a positive or a negative, and it can negatively impact my child to where they maybe don't have a whole lot of respect for their dad down the road, or positively respond. And so even to the side of we have even some parents that'll listen in onto our podcast. We got some good followers there. But how I think there's importance of even parents' response, even on the lower level. So we have little league kids that maybe are in a stressful situation, or they don't do very well at that at bat, the response of a parent. So how important is that response?
No, it's great. And I mean, when you look at our guys and our parents just on the college end, I mean, definitely the parents got to trust me. They got to be able to create some trust that I'm going to do right by their son. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to also, though, what I don't apologize for and what we talk about in recruiting is I'm going to coach your son. There are going to be things that you disagree with and they disagree with. And you're a parent now. You're his support role. It's not your job anymore. It's his job. And that's also important for kids growing up to be able to kind of separate that. But I think it's a great question on so many levels because I'm an emotional guy in general. I tell that to my guys. I am imperfect in some of those responses. And my team knows that. I can get fired up. I am a little old school where I'm going to bark a little bit at some guys. And, of course, it's a different day and age. It's not like, taking a chew in back in the 80s by any means, or those type of things. It's a different day and age. But I think also just being able to tell your guys, hey, didn't handle that great, got really emotional based on these things. I just try to be at least real with our guys. That's also why I like coaching college baseball. These guys are men. They are young men. They're not fully men yet. They're making mistakes. They got a lot to learn, of course, but it's fun in that way of you have to create respect with it. So, like you said, if you're raving around like a lunatic and just only coaching in that way, guys will tune you out. That's just how a player is wired in this day and age. But that's why I think it's important that we do recruit guys that know that, yeah, I can get a little bit emotional. Our staff can. We want to bring out the best in guys. Sometimes that's a pat on the back. Sometimes that's a really big hug. Sometimes that is me telling them that that is not even close to what the expectation is of what we're trying to do. So it's important. Your players will model that. There's programs in the NWAC, there's programs in everyone's league that know that one program or those certain staffs that just, when it gets hairy, they handle it better or worse than other teams. We all know that. And of course, that has to come from the coaches. You can get fired up. It's a human element and why baseball is a great game. But your players will sometimes model, sometimes also though then just kind of take off that energy and totally go away from what the whole objective of the either inning or pitch was. You can just lose yourself in the emotion. So I think it's important. Of course, we're coaches, we're role models. But also any parents out there, I think it's also important that you know that if your kid is going to college baseball, there's a grow up aspect of that. You can't live your life for your kid. Some parents, and I was blessed to have great parents, and hey, my mom did a lot of things for me that I wish that I would have done on my own because college hit me in the face. But like I said, I didn't have social media around earlier. We were talking, there's just a different age guys grow up in now where they got to kind of grow up fast. Help prepare your kid for that of accountability and understanding some of that responsibility that's going to come in any college program. And I do think it doesn't get talked about in the recruiting process a ton, or even just how kids are scouted and how they're evaluated, is that there is a real, call it growing up, call it just a mental aspect of coming into a college program that parents, please be as supportive as you can. They need you. They need you to be a supporter. They don't need you to be a coach. They don't need you to critique everything they're doing or have an opinion on everything either coaches are doing, teammates are doing. I hope that my wife and I can be that type of parent that if our kid isn't doing well, we can cheer for other kids on the team. And that's something you notice. You coach college baseball over a decade. They're those parents that will come when their kid's not pitching. They're those parents that when their kid's slumping and they get benched, they don't say anything and they cheer for the kid who took their spot. And that's a powerful thing. It's no secret that those are some of the kids that I've coached. And I'm like, wow, those are the most put together people I've ever got to come across as 18, 19-year-old young men. So, it's something that definitely is a goal for me. I strive to, and that's me also being a hypocrite of I don't know what parents go through yet. So there's of course a lot of that I'm sure gonna be guilty of some of that too. And I get that. But being a support from a parent standpoint, especially in the game of baseball, when there can be some really tough days, I think needs to get talked about a little bit more, and parents could potentially improve at that. And I think that would keep participation a little higher in youth baseball and keep kids staying in the game a little longer. Because some kids, they really do need to develop physically to even know if they even have baseball skills, or what could carry them on to be a high school player, even. So, it's sad to see just in a big picture of, participation in the game of baseball, umpires leaving the game, those types of things. Hopefully that does trend in a positive direction.
In some of the teams that I've coached, and granted we're in two different situations, right, with the high school versus the college, but the guys that I've been able to get on the most, those are the guys that I'm talking to now after 5 years after they've graduated, right? They know that we're there to make them men. And like I like to tell our guys, like, hey, in a minute, you guys are going to be graduating high school and real life's about to smack you in the face, and it's not kind. And we need to start this growing up process. And I think that correlates to exactly what you were just talking about. I think the high school programs, we're starting to get the scissors of cutting the cord to try to get the guys to college to where the parents can just be supportive. Right. And it's just an interesting dynamic. And I feel like, it's just the kids know that we're there for the betterment of them, the program, the team, and we want to do its best. And sometimes it takes a pretty good butt chewing to get you guys to pull your head out of certain locations to maybe get things figured out so that when you do hit the world, you're not going to just hit the curb, right?
Absolutely. No, I think you hit it on the head, and it's an important piece. But hey, we get guys all ends of the spectrum every year. Of course, I say, hey, let's do this, and then I will have two guys next year that will get their paperwork 4 minutes up to the deadline to participate in the first team meeting, and then the education begins again for the next group of guys. So, of course, it's always important to know that, hey, sometimes it's just, and this is a Jim Horner line for it. Gosh, how many times do I got to tell this kid? One more time. You got to tell him one more time, coach. He's got to hear it at least one more time. So we, of course, can get burnt out on that. I think you touched on another great point that I love is if I'm not talking to you as a player, then you should probably be worried because I'm so over you. I'm not even using mental energy or voice on you. Like, that's when I would be worried as a player if I play for a guy that I think cares. If I think my coach really does care and he's putting that in, I'd be a lot more worried if you're not getting coached. But yet again, I don't think a lot of people think that way at all times. But yeah, that's usually guys can sense that, and I try and and of course imperfections. I try and not be guilty of this, but I've totally been guilty of this as a college coach. Is like, all right, that's the time it burned the bridge with me, man. Like, okay, like, of course, I'm not gonna hurt. I'm gonna try and help you. I'm gonna try to do that, but like, I gotta expend this energy on this guy now. I have to try and get this guy to understand this or learn this. And I try and be better and better about that every year I coach. And you're always blessed when you just have a group of guys that just never puts you in that position. It's always a really fun year when you have teams like that, of course. But kids out there, if you are listening to this, yeah, if you're going to a college program that wins 30 or more games, you better expect to be told to do something differently than you've done it, and at least be comfortable trying that and understanding that there could be some early failure with that, but it could really lead to some big gains as well. And that's a hard thing for especially a really good young player who said, "Coach, man, I rake doing this, or I can spin a breaking ball better than anyone in my county." And a lot of times, also, and I've learned this on the coaching end, you're right. Do that. Don't do it exactly how Johnny or Timmy does it. There are some guys where sometimes the best coaching is letting guys explore and be who they are. And I was terrible at that as a young coach. Like, I had what I thought an infielder needed to look like. I knew what good hitters looked like. I knew what this, that, and the other thing. And then you realize that the game of baseball, that's why it's the most beautiful game. There's a lot of different ways to do it, trying to figure out when to mess with a guy, when to coach a guy. And sometimes, just like you said, at college practice, hey, keep doing it, man. You're good. Just keep punching the clock. Yeah, you weren't very good right there, but you will be if you keep doing what you just were doing. The results will come. So trying to be good about all aspects of that is tough.
Yeah, and I think it's tough for God. You're just opening us up to like so many more avenues to go on this, man. You're killing it tonight. This is good. I can feel the vibe. Yeah, and I think it's the player that things have come easy to him. You hit him like the best in the county or the best in the league or whatever it is. Like, things have always come easy to that player, and I think I don't want to say coddled, but maybe they've been felt to feel really good about themselves and whatnot. And they get to your place and they realize that everyone else is just as good as I am. Like, that's the other player from a different county that was also the best player of his county. Right. And they get kind of stuck in their ways a little bit in times and maybe don't want to hit to instruction until you find that breakthrough moment. Right. And I think that's what you learn as a head coach or as a coach, as a young coach, that you almost want them to struggle a little bit to find their breaking point, to come crawling to you and say, like, yeah, I might need some help. Like, I might want to listen to what you're saying, or they finally buy in and try something because they're having a terrible day, and then they break through and they do what you're telling them and hopefully catch it on video and say, there you go. Like, this is what we were talking about. Right. And there's as many failure stories as there is success stories. And that's a part of coaching. Right. And I think you learn that there's different ways to handle each individual player. And if you're prescribing the same thing to guys, like, you're going to fail because each guy moves a little differently or can do things a little differently. You talk about ball flight. It's a whole other door of things of like what you're capable of doing and how you can be successful as a player. And if you pigeonhole guys or prescribe them one thing to everyone, that's where trouble happens, and I think we've all been around different types of coaches and styles and things in the past, things that, that there's not one coach out there that hasn't done something right that you can take from, right? And others are better than the next as far as being completely holistic with what they're teaching. But I think we learned that like this is a two-way street with the player, and you have to create that trust with them to allow for that feedback loop to happen, for them to say like, hey, I know what you're trying to say right now, but I'm not feeling it. So okay, let's try to find a different way to say it to him, or a different drill, or a different sect for him to try to feel what you're doing, as opposed to like the player that kind of eye roll, or like, okay, I'll try to half-ass try this because coach is telling me to, and I'm gonna try to appease. But that trust process is so important, and it sometimes it takes a while for that breakthrough to happen with them, but you have to be consistent, and there is some players that listen more than others, and the ones that maybe don't try your things, you have to work a little harder on them. But that at the end of the day, if you give them your attention, they're going to try something eventually, and then you find that aha, and you find the results, or whatever they take to make them feel good about it, and then you have them bought in, right, for life. And the guys that never listen are the ones that you've talked about earlier, like addition by subtraction. Like if you're never going to do something, it's addition by subtraction. But I would say 95% of players, you can find that breakthrough as stubborn as they are, and maybe as successful as they've been in the past. Like you can find a way to break them down and get them in your corner. But I love, everything you're talking about. It's great. It's true.
Yeah, and that's great. And I really feel like, and this is just, I guess, me believing in kids, but like, I really think kids want to do well. Like, there's not a lot of guys actually out there like, wow, yeah, this kid, like, he doesn't want to do well. No, like, they want to perform. They want to do well. And you hit the nail on the head. It seems to be a little bit easier once they've had a little bit of that failure creep in, and some of those doubts of, oh shoot, there is a little bigger world of either fundamentals or mechanics, or just that I can grow. I've seen it a hundred times. I get accused of being pretty blunt and honest. You know me well, Kelly, and I don't like to, beat around the bush, or I'll call a spade a spade. One way we do it, and I know it's very businesslike and it doesn't work in every environment or scenario, but we keep stats from day one inter squad. And we keep stats, we post stats, we keep quabs, we track quabs, we track strike percentage with our pitchers, we track free bases. And I'll tell you what, the guys that buy into the little details of what it takes to be good on a day-to-day basis to improve at those tend to turn into your best 8 pitchers, tend to turn into guys that you can put a competitive lineup towards. And it does speed up that process of, hey, bud, I know you're trying. I see what you're trying to do. Can you now see, based on some of these results, the film? I'm a big believer in video, as you just mentioned, coach, of just being able to see kids that think they're doing something, but then see, oh shoot, like what I think my body's doing, I don't fully have awareness of exactly what it's doing yet. I think those are really important to try and get kids to understand that, hey, we can try new things. And also, you touched briefly on it. It might not work the first time you try it too. We all hope we're that give you that cue that's just, oh yeah, this guy, great. He's totally fixed. Yeah. Until the next day when something else goes wrong. So that's the put in work with your guys, and that's, like you said, creating that trust. I've never seen a coach that got trust from his players that just didn't invest in trying to make them better and put in, some of that time, whether it be planning, whether it be hands-on coaching. There's a lot of ways that you can show that love to the player of setting it up for them. I think that's a huge piece of the puzzle too.
Well, we got one last one. We'll talk a little bit. I mean, I know your guys' job is a lot tougher than we have at the 4-year level, because you got to recruit twice as hard, because you don't have 4-year guys, you have 2-year guys. And I guess in COVID that might have existed a little bit longer, but we're done with that. So you have back to 2-year guys and moving guys on. And that's got to be a tough balance for, you're spending so much of your time talking to high school coaches, even college coaches for kickback guys, always out recruiting for your own roster, but you're also trying to move your own guys on. So I guess twofold question, how do you balance that, that workload of trying to fill your roster for the future, while also trying to manage your guys moving on, and two, like, you know, how do you manage the expectations of what the player wants? You know, I think a lot of kids feel that, and I could be wrong here, and you could correct me, that you know, NWAC baseball is a surefire way to get to be a Division I player. You know, and I think a lot of kids have that feeling, if that opportunity is not in high school, that I can just go to that avenue and it'll automatically happen to me. You know, and we don't have to go through percentages and those type of things. That's for a different conversation.
Yeah.
But I guess, how do you manage the workload, and then two, you know, how are you realistic with your players that maybe aren't as realistic with their own expectations of their abilities?
Yeah, it's I love the junior college level, and I also hate it in this exact way of it's kind of even twofold in the answer. Part of it is right when you feel like you get guys starting to play the best baseball of their lives, you're starting to really see some of the huge unlocks that they're doing physically and with their skill set. Then they go be really great players for other guys like yourself and other guys in the country. And it's kind of like, oh man, I really, that's a nice thing of the 4-year level that I do appreciate, or at least I think I do from not, being at it right now. But it also, yeah, it is tough in that way where essentially we need 15 to 18 guys every single year. So you do have to have a little bit of a plan, understand positional needs, how rosters ebb and flow. We run a very, very traditional model, it like the Division I level. We don't like to have typically more than 35 to 38 players, kind of depending on some situations. We actually have 31 this year. We had 30 last year. We had 34 the year before. So we've actually been a little bit lower than that, which then you can bring in, shoot, now you're at risk of injury. And do we have enough pitchers? And we play double headers here in the NWAC. If you don't know how the NWAC schedule goes, where we'll play a double header, either at home or away. And then the next day we'll do the exact same thing, but just flip the location. So creating rosters that can just, keep up with the schedule is a challenge, but very traditional. You're going to need 3 to 4 catchers to run an efficient college program with 15 to 19 pitchers. I don't really like more than 20 pitchers. That's just my personal opinion. There's so many ways to recruit. I've said it earlier. I'll say it again. I'm not telling anyone what we do is the best or right or what they do is wrong. Just typically we kind of like to make sure that the guys know that they're training every day to have a shot to get in a game. A big part of getting that hungry junior college kid or the kid maybe that you mentioned might be a little naive of how good they could be or whatnot. You want to make them feel connected and that their work is getting them there. There's no worse feeling than being the seventh catcher or going out for individual defense and seeing 7 shortstops, because these kids are not stupid. They know that, hey, I'm not gonna, and there's very few kids in today's day and age that will love their teammates, work hard, be great teammates at the college level, and get 2 at bats in 2 years. Like, it's just, that was a thing. I've coached many guys like that. I really have in the past. I don't see it as much in terms of just guys that really just love being there in that experience, because like you said, a lot of junior college and the perception is I want to go play at the next level. How I think the biggest way we manage that here, which could be different, and I like to explain it in a couple ways. One way, if a Division I coach thinks you're a Division I player, they will find you. You will get recruited. You will come to our place, get better at what you think you need to get better at, and they will tell you if you are a good enough player. They make the decision on that, not a junior college coach. So if you're going to, say, hey, coach promised me this, or coach can do this, it's all earned, guys. You need to go in and earn that opportunity to get out on the field and showcase that. So I think being upfront with guys in the recruiting process is, yeah, here at Lower Columbia, we'll have 3 to 8 D1 guys almost every year. Like, we will. We have some great players, some really talented workers, great people, and we'll get guys that have that shot. But I think what's more important and what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years is getting 100% placement of our classes. And that's how we in the recruiting process say, hey, if baseball's a hobby, don't come to Lower Columbia. We want guys that want to move on to the next level. And that's why I say kids go to games, because they have no idea how good all the next levels are. And if we get guys that especially get scholarships at those levels to make huge impacts on their families, ease the financial burden, go get a 4-year degree, get a chance to go hit in the 3-hole, pitch in the rotation, we highly value that. And I think if you get a kid that's motivated to that, but is not driven that, hey, my whole baseball life has been a failure if Vanderbilt doesn't call me or if Oregon State doesn't call me, I think that's important with how hard college baseball is. I don't think a kid will really make the relationships or appreciate the experience of college baseball if that's what they're defining their life on. So you talk about managing expectations, some hard conversations at times, some really easy conversations at times. We do, of course, kind of start the process with guys of, hey, like, everything works out, your skills really take off. I mean, yeah, what are 5, we call them full up dream schools? I mean, just what would be life changing for you based on location, experience, coaching staff, all those things. And then we really actually make them self evaluate and come up with, well, now I want 5 schools at Division 3, Division 2, and NAIA for whatever reasons, and they have to have kind of at least just a generic, simple reason for kind of why they chose these schools. Then we kind of meet up with them and sort of see where we're at or how we maybe view things compared to how they maybe view some things in that way. So by no means I don't want to be a dream crusher. But also I don't want to gas a kid up and say, yeah, absolutely, you can go play for Mitch Canham when for just the lack of a better example, you're 78 miles an hour with no breaking ball. You think you're going to pitch in the Pac-12? No, we need a 3-pitch mix. We need it all dirty. We need it firm, spinning. There's certain things you need to do to be at certain levels or to be All-Americans at certain levels. And, of course, not every player is, and we don't expect that. But there can be some of that realism that isn't always the easiest. I've found it's just better to talk through with kids, give your perspective on it, understand their dreams, say, yeah, okay, I hope you work that hard. Because then the last piece I'll touch base with is, if a kid gives me a list that is UW, WSU, Oregon State, and Oregon, and they're not backing that up with their work or their actions, or they're eating McDonald's and Little Caesars every night, they're drinking Coke, they're going to bed at midnight, then no, your actions are not nearly matching up with the goals that you have set. So let's also not kid ourselves that goals just happen in those ways. And you also can see a lot of kids have some aha moments where it's like, oh shoot, they become better than they even ever thought they could be when they start thinking about it in a little different way. So super tough. Of course, most of our guys want to play professional baseball. They want to play Division I baseball. They love baseball a lot. That's really why I love coaching them in so many ways. But for us, go get an opportunity at the next level. And I think that's what more kids need to understand, is because social media just shows you everyone that gets an opportunity. You think 70% of all high school baseball players go play college baseball, when the reality is the number is a lot smaller than that. I don't want to be misquoted here, but I've heard like 7%. I've heard smaller than 10% type numbers thrown out of national high school players that go play college baseball. Let's start appreciating about how hard it is to go get an opportunity at St. Martin's, how hard it is to go get an opportunity here, there, other places. And if guys buy in, that's the last thing I love. I love this level. I get to talk to 4-year coaches all the time. You get to create relationships. Yeah, we're recruiting our team, like you said, but I'm constantly hearing from other coaches. They give me leads on players. I'm talking our players. I'm talking future players. Now with the transfer portal, guys move around. Like, just don't burn a bridge, kids, because you never know whose buddy is about to get a really sick job that you really want to go play there. And a lot of times that's how information can be passed as well.
Coach, I like to kind of get your take, and as well, Coach Kelly, on this as well. But the fact that how much important role is that high school coach into this? I mean, Eric and I are both high school coaches, and I think it's important that an athlete dialogues with their parents, because ultimately the parents or the athletes can be paying this tuition in this. But how important is the reality? I say reality check conversations to that kid that's maybe hitting 75 on a fastball, right-handed pitcher, saying, "Hey, I'm a D1 guy." No, you're not, bud. But how important is our dialogue with our student athletes? And Coach Gow, I'd like to hear your opinion on this as well.
And Kelly, I'll kind of be brief, but call me old school again. Yeah, I like talking to club coaches. I like talking to high school coaches, especially now where there's a even more of a separation of what a club ball guy is to what a high school guy is, and how those things are valued and guys' times and those types of things. Yeah, that's a red flag for me when a guy has an issue. And coach, you hit on it with your schedule. It's like you're telling me you can't go play 20 games in the high school. That's a that much of an imposition for you to go get coached by a good coach who cares, be in your community, represent that, be with kids you grew up with. Like, oh, I'm sorry. And that's just my opinion, of course. So I think it's important. I like to kind of be the FBI a little bit in a way. We snoop around, grade guys. We talk to counselors. I'm no, especially on the east side, that's a really good way to get a lot of clean information on kids that I can't see every day or just hop up the road. So my opinion is it's important. I value it. I know others don't as much, and I get that, but I think just the more perspectives you get, of course, take grain of salt with anything, and of course know where certain information could be coming from different sources. But I just think you're more well informed, and why wouldn't you want to know about a kid that you're making an investment on? And not that, like, hey, if we don't win at Lower Columbia, I don't got to sell my house and my wife and I don't have to move. Like, we're blessed that it's not life or death to us, but still, I mean, I am trying to provide for my family. I want to be successful. I want to keep this program, having the legacy that it has. So, for those reasons, it's important to me.
Yeah, I think you uncovered a couple different things, Jason. It's I don't love the status of our club scene currently. I think it's completely different than when all of us played. I think there's a lot of undue pressures put on kids to perform, to get to a certain level, to do this and that. Because of that social media aspect, I think that's always in their face that so-and-so is going to this school or offered by that school. That they don't get that, that feeling of self-wealth. And I also think that too, that there's a lot of prying within that club scene of in vengeance too, of this guy moved to this place or, was whatever, that movement that happens within the club scene, that there's a lot of, clouds put on kids. They're pressured to have to, succeed at a certain level. I mean, we're doing select at a very, very young age now. I think we all see the Twitter stuff of the 6U stuff being posted out there, which is unbelievable to me, because I was diving in the cul-de-sac growing up, catching balls from my dad at that point in time and not playing on a select team with sick uniforms. So I don't know if that's as much the parents or the coaches or what the scene is of where that is, but because of that, I think like Luke talked about, like you want a bunch of different opinions on a kid from different avenues. I honestly think that the best way to get a feel for a kid's personality is to ask coaches within his conference, opponents, coaches, how they feel about that kid, because they don't have that relationship. They don't have any ties to him as, being loyal or not loyal or whatever it might be, but they get to see him as a player, right? Like that guy's a pain in the ass. Like he's always, dirtbag, like balls in dirt. Like he's always doing all the extra things right. He's tough to pitch to. He grinds it out 2K. He's got a demeanor about him, all that. Like, I think that's where you're going to get really your most honest decision on it. But I think a lot goes into that information, and we're seeing it now with kids. It's a tough thing, and I think in our local area here in the last few weeks, there's been some kind of unfortunate kids passing away from some stuff that were both part of summer programs, and it's impossible to know to what end this might exist, but I think the mental health aspect of things right now, and we see it maybe more at the college level, but it probably trickles down to the high school level, just because of how much touch points we have on guys on a daily basis. So we have a better feel for what they're going through, but definitely think there's just so much pressure on kids these days, and you lose that kind of love of the game, it's a really tough deal going on right now. So you just want the guys that can really grind it out, and hopefully Luke mentioned it, like there's opportunities in a lot of different places to play college baseball, and really, really good programs. I mean, there's junior college programs that are better than what we provide. There's Division III programs that are better than we provide. Like, there's really good baseball out there. So putting undue pressure on kids I think is a really big challenge, but you're trying to exhaust every option you can to get a feel for a player, and having real conversations with them too. I think that us in the recruiting world, like, we can ask the questions that we want to get the answers, and have a feel for how a player interacts on their visit, and how they converse and treat parents, and and their engagement. There's just a lot of stuff that we can decipher, because we know what works and maybe what doesn't work based on the past. So very long-winded, maybe a little off topic even too, but hopefully things can get reined in, and players can all have like real expectations of themselves and what they can accomplish in the future.
Yeah, and it's also, and I'll add one more point to this, is some high school coaches also don't give you exactly the picture that you need as a college coach. And sometimes you have to just wade through a little bit of that. And I'm also like, I'm not banging on high school coaches by any means, because of course I understand it. But me, like, hey, I'm very much a business oriented, like, hey, guy, like, they're all great kids, man. Like, of course they are. Like, they are. So that can be tough. And I do, though, it's a red flag to me when a high school coach doesn't feel any investment, or like won't even really speak on behalf of a player. And it's not like, of course, there's so many layers, you can't just, like I said, let one thing dictate. But apples usually don't fall too far from trees, and we talked about parents earlier. Hopefully there's, just like you said, a good wave of communication, that also, if a college coach says something, a high school coach can provide some clarity of, oh, yes, I understand kind of how you might have taken that, but I know either this coach from working with them in the past, or we've sent their guys there before, or, this is really what he's meaning there. I think that's important in kids' processes too. And some kids use that, some kids don't as well.
Awesome. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I mean, just when we get, every episode we get to, and we're all fired up, the next one's just as good. And I think it also is helping us get real close to spring, because you guys are about to kick off, and Jason and I are a month away, right? So awesome. But Kurt, thank you so much for taking an hour or so out of your night to come on and talk some shop with us. We really truly appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys. A lot of fun. Love growing the game. Thank you for doing this stuff. I'm looking forward to running into you guys soon. So appreciate it, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Coach.
I think the last time I ran into you was in a snowstorm in Pullman, and hopefully it's a heck of a lot warmer.
No doubt about it. No doubt.
What was that snowstorm, Eric? You want to talk about that
The
a little
last
bit?
part of that, what happened that night. So
we don't talk much about that night, Kelly. But yes, I do recall. I do recall the night. So yeah. So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.